Welcome to Breaking News to Trading Moves. Today we're focusing on a recent event that definitely made some waves in certain market sectors. Taylor Swift's theatrical run, the official release party of a Showgirl.
That's right.
This was a pretty unique, right? A one-weekend-only thing tied to her new album.
Wow.
But it still topped the U.S. box office at $33 million.
And about $46 million globally, all told, for a very short, very concentrated event.
Yeah.
So our focus today is really to map out who came out ahead and who maybe lost a step because of this strategy. We're looking purely at the numbers, the distribution approach, and what that tells us about, well, consumer behavior that weekend.
Okay, let's start right there with the strategy, because usually, big releases go through major studios. This was different. Theater only, one weekend. Who actually handled it? How'd they get it out there?
Yeah, that's the core of it. The distribution was managed directly by AMC.
The theater chain itself.
Exactly. They bypassed the traditional studios completely, and the film got pretty wide placement, specifically across AMC, of course, but also Regal and Cinemark locations.
Well, major chains.
Oh, yeah. The result was just, heavy foot traffic, intense audience focus that really pulled attention away from everything else playing that weekend.
Okay, so let's look beneficiaries. The exhibitors, the theaters themselves seem like the obvious winners here. What was the direct upside for those companies?
Well, it was a huge boost for the whole event cinema idea because it was treated like a special limited time thing, almost like a concert.
Right.
They could use premium pricing and they saw tons of sellouts. It was a real shot in the arm for U.S. movie theaters. And don't forget the advertising networks tied to them.
Got it.
We can point to 4 key players who really saw a benefit.
Yeah.
Obviously, AMC, that's ticker AMEs. Then Cinemark, ticker CNK. Also IMAX, ticker IMAX, since these kinds of events work great on their large screens.
Makes sense.
And finally, National Cinemedia, ticker NCMI. They handle a lot of that pre-show advertising. More eyeballs means more value there.
You mentioned premium tickets, but theaters make a lot of concessions too, don't they? Was that a big factor here, like with all those sold-out shows? Is it really about the popcorn?
Oh, absolutely. It's critical. Ticket revenue gets split, often heavily favoring the content creator or distributor, especially early on.
Right.
But concessions, that's almost all profit for the theater. So you fill those seats, especially with an engaged fan base buying themed stuff, special drinks, not just popcorn. The volume is enormous.
So it's more than just filling seats. It's filling them with people ready to spend inside the theater.
Exactly. This strategy basically delivered this very concentrated, very profitable revenue stream in just a few days. Analysts reckon the boost from concessions alone was, very helpful for the exhibitors. Much more straightforward than negotiating margins on a typical studio film.
Okay, so the theaters were buzzing, but the event was tied to music. Did that buzz carry over? How did it impact, say, digital music platforms?
Yeah, that's the synergy part of the strategy. The film was all about the new album, the lead single. So the excitement from the theater definitely spilled over. It accelerated streaming demand almost immediately. It fed right into that digital ecosystem. We looked mainly at the 2 big ones, Spotify, ticker SPOT, and Apple, ticker AAPL. Both saw, sustained listening and engagement right after that weekend. The movie gave fans this shared moment, and they took that feeling home to listen to the album.
What about retail? I have heard chatter about watch parties, people buying themed stuff. Did that translate to actual consumer spending outside the theater and streaming?
It did. You get this kind of fan activation, and it moves beyond just the main event. There were branded food tie-ins, coffee promotions. They saw real measurable bumps in spending. So yeah, big consumer brands that maybe had a connection or ran related promotions definitely saw some increased traffic. The ones highlighted were Starbucks, ticker SBUX. And the grocery chain Kroger, ticker KR fans, really built a whole little economy around this thing for the weekend.
Okay, so lots of winners.
Yeah.
But when one event just dominates attention and screen space like that, someone else usually gets squeezed out. Who felt the pinch on the movie release side that weekend?
Well, yeah, screens and just general audience buzz were heavily focused on the Swift event. So predictably, other films opening or playing that weekend saw softer results than they might have hoped for.
Right.
The material we looked at specifically mentioned that Dwayne Johnson's film, which was out around then, seemed to underperform expectations during that specific window.
Okay.
And that puts a drag on the studios behind those films, the ones counting on a solid opening weekend. The 2 mentioned as being most impacted were Disney, ticker DIS, and Warner Bros. Discovery, ticker WBD.
But hang on, is that really a fair comparison?
Right.
A huge studio blockbuster versus a kind of niche concert film, even if it's Taylor Swift.
No.
Does one weekend's underperformance truly matter to giants like Disney?
It's less about the immediate dollars, perhaps, and more about momentum and perception. That opening weekend number, it sets the story for a film's entire run.
Ah, okay.
So when you lose prime screens and all the conversation is about something else, it can hurt the long-term box office potential. It affects subsequent windows like streaming or VOD. It basically forces those studios onto the back foot on a weekend they might have expected to lead.
Got it. And what about streaming services themselves? People were out at the movies. Did that mean fewer hours spent on Netflix or Roku that weekend?
Yes, though likely more of a short-term dip. These kinds of big, time-limited events, especially things that encourage group activity like listening parties, they can definitely carve out viewing time from the streaming platforms.
Especially Friday, Saturday night.
Exactly, before things sort of normalize again during the week. So the companies potentially seeing a bit of that short-term disruption would include Netflix, ticker NFLX,
Right.
and Roku, ticker ROKU.
This brings us to maybe the bigger picture issue here. It sounds like this wasn't just about one successful weekend, but maybe about the underlying model itself.
Precisely. I think that's the key takeaway for many observers. This event really highlighted a pathway for major artists with huge built-in audiences, to potentially bypass the big studios altogether.
How so?
By going direct to exhibition, like AMC in this case, they capture a much larger share of the revenue. It cuts out the traditional studio distributor role, limiting their leverage. They've always been the gatekeepers, you know?
Can you give us a sense of the economics? Like, what's the difference in the split between the artist and theater in this direct deal versus a typical Hollywood movie?
Sure. So traditionally, a big studio might take, say, 60%, maybe even 70% of the box office gross, especially in the first couple of weeks.
Wow, okay.
But in these direct deals, the reports suggest the artist and the theater chain are splitting perhaps 80% or even 90% of the gross ticket sales between them.
That's a huge difference.
It is. It completely changes the profit potential for the artist and the exhibitor. That's why it's seen as potentially disruptive.
Okay.
And this direct-to-theater dynamic is seen as a potential headwind for some of the legacy distributors who rely heavily on that traditional model. Two mentioned specifically are Paramount Global, ticker PARA, and Comcast, which owns Universal Studios, ticker CMCSA.
So summing up, we saw a very focused short-term event use a direct-to-theater strategy. It generated clear success for the theaters and the artist, energized a fan base, but it also put pressure on competing films and, maybe more pointedly, raised questions about the traditional studio distribution system.
That covers it well. And just before we finish, a quick reminder for everyone listening, this information is purely for educational purposes. It shouldn't be taken as financial advice or any kind of recommendation to buy or sell stocks or securities. What we've discussed is based on the opinions of the author of the material we reviewed.
Absolutely. And building on that last point about artists potentially bypassing the old systems, here's something to think about. If this direct model works consistently and theaters find it profitable enough, could they become less dependent on the major studios for content? What might that mean for the big summer blockbuster slates the studios always rely on to anchor their year? Just some food for thought.